Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hello, I'm the voice without a face. Here we go. Welcome back to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode 379 for the week of March 16th, 2025. Joining me is the full crew. I am the one who was gone last week, so thank you, Tao, for filling in as I had a last-minute unexpected delay. And I missed much of, I caught up on your discussion later on, so I'm sorry that I missed it, though. Tao, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. And yeah, I guess you're raring to go. You wanted to just wanted to start before we're even on the air.
I always wonder about that. Like, we're live, but we got black screen, so maybe I could just start. What happens? So
Disembodied voice.
that's right.
Coming
to you live.
It takes a couple of seconds because SteamYard is playing uploaded video. That's what the intro is. So it takes a couple seconds for it to transition out into the live feed.
There we go. And so now everybody listening, you now know why we have the pacing that we do. So, all right. Game Logic, how are you, sir? Other than running the boards.
I am not great. So I've had a stomach virus for about the last 3 or 4 days. So I will try and, well, actually, I probably won't. So just a heads up that maybe you may hear stomach rumblings and whatnot in the background because I'm hopped up on Pepto-Bismol. So that's what I had to do to make it into the show tonight. So,
well, and if you need to step away, we all understand and would much rather have you take care of what you need to take care of.
Yeah, no, I'm probably past that point, but yeah, the background noise is will be quite amusing.
Oh,
I'm sure to say.
That's that is one version of a hot mic, that's for sure. So anyhow, let's go ahead and get started here on the Enough to Keep Going podcast. Every week we break our show down into 3 segments. Our first segment is some of the main games that we've been playing over the week or some big new titles. Then we'll dive into some of the news and analysis of the week and wrap up with some other games that we've been playing. So since I was not here last week, I'm going to stay on the mic and talk about one of the games that I figured I would talk about last week, but I'm glad that I got a chance to play some more of it this week because I'm a little more positive on it than I was last week. So this is the Suikoden 1 and 2 HD remaster. So this came out not this past week, but a week before. So it's been out for about a week and a half. And it is the original Suikoden game from PlayStation 1 and Suikoden 2 from PlayStation 1 as well. Both were done by Murayama, who was also the director designer of Suikoden Chronicles that we talked about last year in terms of Suikoden Chronicles 100 Heroes, which was very much in the vein of Suikoden. And so, and it is very much, you can see that lineage going back all the way with the first game in terms of the storytelling, you are building a wide variety of characters, the multi-tiered combat in terms of a front row and a back row, so that all wraps up into there. But where Suikoden Chronicles came out last year in 2024 and is very much a 2024 game in terms of all the niceties and quality of life features that we have come accustomed to, jumping all the way back to 1995, 1996 for Suikoden 1. I realized how much I miss some of those niceties. So the remaster...
Quality of life items except for hit points on monsters.
Yes. Fair enough. In Suikoden Chronicles, yes. There are hit points on, you see your hit point damage when you are in Suikoden. So I've only been playing Suikoden 1 at this point. Suikoden 2, I've fired up just to launch it, to look at it and see what it looks like. I own a version of it on the PlayStation Network. It's on a Vita memory card somewhere, wherever my Vita may be, which, my annual charging it and firing it up probably is due. But the graphics wise, they do look. I mean, they look good. This does not have the kind of the full-on kind of Square Enix HD 2D remaster aspect that they did with Dragon Quest 3 last year, where Dragon Quest 3 really looks vibrant. Really, the backgrounds are fully redone. This is very much a remaster versus a remake in that vein, where everything is just polished up, but it's still certainly the old game sitting in there as well. It drops you right into it, right? Like, there is not much of a lead up. This is not a Final Fantasy where you've got a half hour of constant dialogue before you get going. You are out and about, and the game itself is not super forgiving, right? Like, it is easy to get not necessarily overwhelmed, but the way the character management happens here, and this goes back to the quality of life aspects. It's one of the things that wasn't changed in the game, is that each character has their own inventory, and you can transfer items between characters, but they don't necessarily, like, if one character is full, it doesn't automatically plop it into another character. So there's a little bit more kind of menu maintenance here. If you've picked it up, the day one edition, I picked it up physically just to have it physical, but it comes with 2 kind of buffs that attach to your character, where it doubles the XP and doubles the money drop, which is really helpful in terms of grinding. It in some ways makes it certainly a whole lot easier to get going. Because of that double XP, you're leveling up pretty quickly. But it is, I think that's a nice feature in the remaster. One of the other things it does is it brings a run to Suikoden 1. Suikoden 2 had a run with it. They both had it. If you had certain characters in your party, you could run. In Suikoden 1 now you can just run in general. Strangely, the amount of quality of life improvements here is relatively small, and that's kind of where I was kind of down on it last week, where it feels like a real missed opportunity in some ways. You do have you can speed up the battle. You can kind of 2 times the speed, but it is not like in Bravely Default or in Octopath Traveler, where you're kind of setting that at a game wide, where everything is just running. You have to manually fast forward the battle in each battle. And however they've done it, it actually is, it is pretty much just like 2x speed, because even the music speeds up twice as fast. So it's not just like the battle system gets it gets cranked up and everything moves a little faster. It's basically the game is running twice as fast. I'm playing on Switch. It's running at 30 frames a second. On other platforms, it runs at 60. I knew that this was something that I kind of wanted either on PC or on Switch, in order just for the portability of it with the Steam Deck. And I'm really glad I did, because the one thing that they don't do for a quality of life, which is one of the reasons why PlayStation 1 and 2 era RPGs always are tough to go back to for me, is that you're really limited on where you can save, right? You can always save when you get to an inn, and then in the world there are certain orbs, placed in a dungeon or in other spots where you can manually save. There is, and what many of the reviews talk about this as well, is that it does say that there's an autosave function, but that autosave function only kicks on when you are on the screen with, oh man, I can hear my dogs in the background, and maybe you guys can hear them too. So they've got some springtime energy. But the autosave function only kicks on when you're on a screen that has a manual save orb. So You don't have to go to the orb and go through the menu. It will automatically save. You can still go to the orb and choose what file you want to overwrite or create a new slot. But throughout the rest of the world, there's no autosave. There is no, like, you're out in the field, you're in the middle of a dungeon, there is no quick save function at all. Something that modern RPGs do very well, especially modern portable RPGs or remasters, have frequently incorporated a save anywhere or an autosave function, even a quick save in some of the Final Fantasy remakes, so that you only get one slot, but it's there. So if you need to step out, which again is why it's nice to have on a portable system, because I can put the Switch into sleep mode and come back to it 2 days later. And as long as I'm charged, or at least I have some charge left, I haven't lost any progress. But so that's a real quality of life piece to me that feels like a missed opportunity in terms of just the accessibility. Otherwise, both of these games are heralded for their great story, their variety of character development. They do kind of Suikoden 2 takes place a couple hundred years after Suikoden 1, and you even get some of the characters in it, or maybe it's just 50 years afterward, but it takes place afterward. It's a different main character, but some of the side characters do show up in Suikoden 2 as well. Suikoden 2 looks great. So, but all of the kind of fast forward quality of life features, the run features that I've talked about Suikoden 1 also apply for Suikoden 2. So it's definitely a solid way to play them, and they look better than they ever have, but it feels very much, for a game that was announced in 2022, it feels very rushed as a remaster where there's not a whole lot added to it. So while I'm enjoying it, I've had to come to the spot of kind of putting it in, not thinking of it in terms of a modern game, but really putting myself back in kind of a historic context to play it and appreciate it for what it is, not for kind of the things I wish it could have had added into a remaster.
Yeah, it's interesting you said the thing about the quick saves, and I mean, definitely. I mean, if we skip past that there are always one of two ways to come at these things, right? Either the desire and appreciation thereof of modernization, right, or a strict, like, almost religious pedanticism around, like, don't touch it, like it was perfect, like just groom the graphics. So if we go past that, we've been fairly RPG heavy, I think, not only on this show, but just in general around the industry, right? I mean, RPGs have kind of ruled the roost since last year. And that being said, I feel like historically there was a point in time where it was save anywhere all the time, right? And obviously that was most prevalent on PC. And then games.
Yep, and then once you had consoles with hard drives in them, that became a very quick, easy addition there. Yep.
Yes, but then consoles started trying to make difficulty centered around the notion of checkpoint saves, which I always disliked as a design implementation. But as of late, it seems like we're getting back to the convenience of save anywhere and no longer kind of tricking the difficulty. But so it's very interesting to hear you talk about in this HD remaster, which I guess is a reflection of, they just didn't want to really touch the gameplay and the game design at all. Kind of implementing that kind of antiquated take on game saves.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like if that's the lens that they were trying to go at it with, that it does kind of honor the original kind of scaling of the game, that it forces you to be very diligent and deliberate as you're moving through a dungeon in terms of what healing and your other items that you have, because you're not necessarily going to get to a save spot quickly. It's also caused me to be more intentional about resting at inns than I probably normally would in an old school RPG, where I had that ability of kind of, I knew that I could do a quick save and come back to it without, I find early on, I found myself battling being down in HP very quickly and not necessarily having a whole lot of options. So, but that stays true to the original experience as well.
Are there any options for difficulty settings?
Yes. Yeah, there's difficult. I think there's just 3: an easy, normal, and hard. And so I haven't looked at them to see if they scale HP points. I think from what I remember reading that's what it is. It's not like it increases the rate of random encounters. So this is a mid-90s RPG. We got lots of random encounters here. There's not the difficulty aspect is not very granular. It is easy, normal, hard, right? There is not a turn on the, in some of these, I think even the HD remaster or the remake of Dragon Quest III, I think some of the other ones that have been in that Square Enix HD 2D aspect, you have some accessibility pieces there where you can decrease or increase the random encounter rate. You can increase or decrease the enemy HP or your HP. So there's, ways to kind of nuance where you find that difficulty versus simply just having a big old toggle switch that does a little bit of everything.
My last question before I turn it over to Tao, load times. Are there any, are they a pain? Any improvements on that, right, with the game's new implementation? I mean, granted, they didn't change the design, but you would hope that with like new hardware that those things wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, no, they're not. There's definitely, I don't remember them being really onerous at the time, but as a disc-based game, there was always some load times. I'm assuming that from what I've read, the modern consoles and PCs are really quick. Even the Switch feels pretty snappy. There is definitely a little bit of transition, but not nearly what it would have been in the late 90s in terms of load time. So no, it doesn't take too long to get in and out of battles, in and out of screens. There's a little bit of a delay as you're going from like a town to an overworld, but not like a big, in part because it's not loading something huge. It's not a big 3D world that it's loading in. It's very much a kind of traditional Final Fantasy overworld where you're kind of walking around. Again, you did the same thing in Uwedin Chronicles, right? You'd get out of a town and you'd get out on the overworld map and you'd be moving around there. Feels very much in that same vein. Tao, any questions before we move on?
Just one question I had was, I know you mentioned that you got on Switch because of portability, but any reason you didn't get it on for Steam initially?
Yeah, actually, physical release, having a physical copy of it. I think that's something for some of the. I picked up a physical copy of Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. I think for some of these kind of older games, I want a physical version to know that I've got something to come back to, and also, honestly, that I knew that I could put it in suspend and I could go a lot longer on my on my Switch, without having to plug back in. There's been plenty of times where I've put a game in suspend and kind of life happens and I don't get back to my Steam Deck in 2 days and my battery's dead. And so I knew that I had a little more grace period with the Switch. All right. Hero, thanks for joining us. Glad to have you here. We'll keep you a little busy as you're at work. So thanks. Always glad to have you come in. So last week, you gentlemen talked quite a bit about Avowed, and I'm sorry I missed it because I've been playing quite a bit of Avowed as well. I got through the Emerald Stair. Now I'm into the third zone, into Shatter Scrap. There we go. But I want to come back, and Game Logic, it looks like you have been playing it still as well. Given that you were having some technical issues last week, I want to start kind of with a tech check-in to see how your stability is with Avowed.
Stability seems to be much improved. So either as a result of patches, I've seen, I think 2 come down since I put that Radeon card in that system, or a matter of updated drivers. So I did pull down, I think the Adrenaline 25.3.1 drivers, which just came out on March 6th. So I put those in tonight, and just one sec, sorry. But even before then, as a result of the game patches, stability seemed improved. So I wasn't getting the, crashes every, hour to hour and a half that I was seeing. Frame rate isn't any better. And so the game just doesn't perform well at all, at least on the Radeon card I have. Regardless of drivers, I have to set it at a mixture of medium and low settings, turn ray tracing off, play at 1920 by 1080p, and other things, and that's in order for me to get frames like in the 70s. So I'm really kind of disappointed with how well optimized it is for Radeon cards, and but like I said, I was playing on an RTX 4070 Super before then, and it was the exact opposite. I was seeing frames in 115, 122 frames per second with everything turned on, including ray tracing. So it's clearly just a matter of how much time was spent optimizing for different technologies. And the Radeon 6700 XT is an older card, but it's the equivalent of an RTX 3000 series GPU, so it should still be a viable hardware target. But
yeah, it should be enough to run it. That's for sure.
Yeah. So so technical wise, that's where we are, and I've continued to kind of play around with it. Gameplay wise, I'm still enjoying it. I mean, the notion of kind of exploration in the zones is still kind of appealing. I am off track, I guess, because of the slightly random way that I go about playing these games and not feeling dedicated to following a storyline straight through. So I think I've off tracked, and I know Tao, when you and I talked, you mentioned going into zones that you were under leveled for. I think I banged my head against the wall of the fight with, I call her the tree queen, but when you encounter the Dalmagans, I think they're called.
Yep, over on the western part of the map.
Yeah, so the tree people. So I think I banged my head against going through that fight in the orchard with them until I finally realized that they were all like level 20. I was level like 7, so clearly was not pulling out of that fight. Then it was hard to like get, it was basically like playing an extraction shooter to get myself out of that zone, because then I hit random encounters on my way out, which I guess it was fortunate in some ways, because it actually finally forced me to use the fast travel system, because the game was so much fun, kind of in a Destiny 2 kind of way, where you could use fast travel, but it's kind of neat just fighting your way across the map, because then you're always grinding and leveling. But this was an instance where you need to get to a fast travel node, and which I had never done before. So I'd actually honestly never used fast travel in the game. But finally did at that point.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to kind of pull yourself out of a situation with the fast travel. As I once got stuck into a water hole without any way to get back out, or at least couldn't figure it out. Fast travel worked very well. But yeah, I think that's a spot where they are in tier 3. They're in purple tier in terms of their gear. And yeah, that anytime you're going up against somebody that's, especially when you get waves of those enemies in that area of the map with both the tree people and the mushroom guys, it's easy to get overwhelmed when you're low tiered. There were a couple of fights with like the lizard people that early in that section, in the Emerald Stair, I ended up running away from because I couldn't. I got in that same space, but later on, I ended up encountering some and kind of brute forcing through. Used a lot more grenades in this level, in this world map, than the first one, in part because I was kind of pushing at that up against that difficulty level. But I agree with you, right? It's very fun. I actually explored most of the map before even getting to advancing the main quest back in the town of Emerald Stair, just because the exploration is enjoyable and the discovery of things is kind of is where I'm finding more fun than the overall quest to some degree.
Yeah, a neat workaround that I found, not workaround, because again, I wasn't able to defeat that fight, but however, I was able to extract some goodness out of it, because what I was able to figure out, if you tiptoe around the edges of the orchard, you can actually, so over the course of the fight, I actually came across like all the little areas in that part of the map where there are magic items scattered. And so then what I realized is, if you don't charge into the orchard, like if you don't run, you don't trigger the speech interaction with that character. And so if you tiptoe around the edge of the orchard, you can actually get to all of the magic items, including like the health vial in the corner. There's an amulet there, and then there's a magic bow. And I had to, the bow I had to do like twice, but I was able to, tiptoe and kind of crouch and stealth around to get all of the magic items without triggering the actual encounter with the queen. Then that's when I booked out of there and got to a fast travel node and got out.
I enjoyed that encounter. I did it toward the end of the zone, and there is it's designed in such a way that you can kind of stealth your way in through those enemies to get to the queen without killing anything. Certainly was not my experience, was that I had to fight my way through to get to the queen. But even after fighting and killing a number of tree people, depending on how you navigate that dialogue interaction with the queen, it can become a fight, or it can become, she can give you the quest item that you're looking for, which is kind of neat.
Yes, if you're leveled up high enough in certain of your attributes. So mine weren't. So that dialogue tree for me, and this is, it was part of the reason why I was getting frustrated before I finally realized that it was because I was under leveled, was like that tree for me. A fight was inevitable. Like there was no way in and out of the tree with the diplomacy options. But the rest of the game is pretty good. I do feel like I'm sensing certain elements of cheese in some of the fights, right? Where, like, I don't know, like when your two companions go down, like, and you try to, I feel like whenever you try to get to the companions, like all of a sudden any ranged enemies become like hyper accurate. They can start like hitting you with way more accuracy than previous. So that's a little like not that,
Yeah, the range enemies can definitely quickly take your health down if they've got multiple, and you become suddenly the only target that they're throwing at. I think that's one of the benefits of the companion system, is that they end up just kind of pulling aggro for so many encounters. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying the story, though. That the Emerald Stair world is really interesting. A lot of the side quests were, side quests felt a lot grayer than in the first zone, in terms of, some of the decisions you get to make is not are not as clean, and especially as you get to the end of that zone, it feels like you're making some decisions that definitely are going to have some knock-on effects of where the narrative goes. And I think that's narrative wise, and some of and kind of the choice stuff, I feel has been really consistent up until kind of the end encounter in the Emerald Stair. Without spoiling too much, it is, there's a battle, and depending on how have you done this? Have you finished the Emerald Stair?
No, I haven't. I went back to the first zone because I got stuck on the Emerald Stair, and actually I didn't get to play this past week, so I'm kind of still stuck, just leveling my character up right now.
Yeah, so not to spoil anything, but there's there's a way where you can deplete the enemy's rank in a side quest that's not really listed at all. And I kind of stumbled onto it. I mean, and that was definitely one where I was underleveled and threw a whole lot of grenades and had some cheap fights and went through almost all my health potions to try to stay alive. But the result is that their numbers are much more depleted when the battle happens. But I did all that well before the story events trigger, and in theory I did that without leaving any witnesses because everybody died, except for my own people. But when this battle happens, everybody knows that I was the one who depleted their ranks, right? Like I think in some ways, like there's a forced it doesn't have that nuance of like there's a way to maybe kind of thread that needle, which I was trying, but it kind of forces the hand of kind of making aware that you played a part in influencing the battle, even if you were trying to stay more passive. So, and which makes sense from a story point. Like it is, you see them lining up some of the pieces on the board in terms of creating the sides, and so this keeps you moving in that direction.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering too, like how you mentioned that part. Excuse me. But if other things in the story, like there's people that I've let go, or I didn't turn in, or I didn't kill when I had that choice to, like, will that somehow help me or do something to the story later on, in the game? Like I'm having a tough time, and maybe somebody comes and saves, helps me or saves me or something because I helped them, out at some point. That was a little bit. That kind of helping a little bit in the first section with that one. I can't remember the one woman that you
Who
let
had
out
their
of that jail.
grenades and the yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And then
she comes back and she's at
yeah.
the boat,
She's at
right?
the dock. Yeah, she's at
Yeah.
the dock. She kind of helps you
Yeah.
when you're trying to negotiate with that the other little like furry
Yeah.
person.
So we're all through the first section. So if you the kind of the end boss of that first section, who was responsible for the kind of event of the story beat of your existence in that first map in the first town, you have the choice of either fighting him or letting him go. And I let him go. And when I encounter people from his group in a cave in Emerald Stair, they don't attack me. They, you know, they have some lines of dialogue about kind of an uneasy truce. Just because you treated this person doesn't mean that we trust you. So there is some kind of knock on and follow up there. I'm definitely seeing some of that. So which is interesting, and finding some other spaces where there are some of the choices you made have some impact in terms of who's out and around on the map. So War Awana, glad to have you here. Yes, you are not late. You are right on time. So yeah, I think there are some choices there. It definitely seems, as I wrapped up the main story in Emerald Stair, that some of those choices are definitely coming back to kind of haunt me. Actually, I was even intentional about who I had in my party, knowing the choice I was going to make, so that I was trying to avoid some of that interaction. But yeah, and some of those choices depend on who you also have in your party and kind of how they respond to it. Again, it's not like they leave your party, at least at this point I haven't seen that, but they definitely have different lines of dialogue if they're approving or disapproving of some of those choices. But yeah, it is still really enjoying it. I've found some frustration here and there with the map, and actually one of the times is just simply the verticality, but for the most part I feel like they do a pretty good job of how they describe and where that goes. Sometimes that's also like some of the bounties are not precise, so you're kind of hunting around a little bit more for some of that space. But I really enjoyed the bounties, a lot of the side quests in the Emerald Stair, and yeah, I'll be very curious to see if I think there's 5 zones total, 5 areas, and so I'll be interested to see if we get kind of a if it starts to thin out as we go, as we get further toward the end, or if each zone is kind of just as densely packed with things as we go through. So
Yeah, and I've definitely seen the verticality thing where like there inexplicably seem to be areas that you can clamber and mount, like even to the point where you will often try and climb up a surface that seems like you shouldn't be able to, but you can. But then unexplainably, you'd swear like the exact same type of thing or a vertical surface that it seems like you should be able to scale and you're not able to. So yeah, it's
yeah, all right. There's some of there's a conceit there of kind of going back to kind of the limitations of scope. One of the things that I've enjoyed in the Emerald Stair is I think about a couple weeks ago, Game Logic, when you were talking about how you wish that people would react to you as you're pilfering and stealing all their stuff. That I found that multiple times happen to me in the Emerald Stair, where one of the first quests, she says, I can see you, I'm right here, I can see you going through my things, right? And then there's another time when somebody complains about you looking at their journal and invasion of privacy. So there's a few nods to that. Again, it doesn't it doesn't penalize you for anything, but it feels like they're a little more kind of cognizant of recognizing some of that. But
yeah, there's no punishment like in the Elder Scrolls where you
yeah,
get haunted as soon as you take like one little thing, even if there's nobody around.
And I think those one-liners are sufficient, right? It's just part of atmosphere and ambiance, right? Just when they completely ignore it, it just seems like it breaks that. I forget what the term is, verisimilitude or whatever. It breaks that suspension of disbelief,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I heading into I think by the nature of how I did the Emerald Stair, I ended up with, even before kind of tackling the main story stuff, I ended up with tier 3 purple tier for most of my weapons and armor. And so, but I found myself doing more melee with my sword and board than my wand. And actually, it wasn't until later on in the level when I was like, oh yeah, I have a wand again. Because again, finding the combat enjoyable. And so it's easy to lose a few hours just exploring in the world. Game Logic, any other thoughts before we move on to the other section?
Nope, not for me.
All right. Well, let's move into our news headlines. And Tal, let's start with you as a former Pokemon Go player, or maybe still occasional, a relapsed Pokemon Go player. So you've got Niantic headline here.
Yep. Still playing. I still pretty much play pretty much every day still. At least just jump in there to do some like friend stuff, because you can give stuff to friends and receive whatever they're gifting you and stuff like that. But yeah, so Pokemon developer, and this is off of Game Industry Biz by Vicky Blake. Pokemon Go developer Niantic has been acquired by the Savvy Games Group subsidiary Scopely. The deal is reported to be about $3.5 billion. And this matches details that were leaked last month. I know there was the big rumors last month. And this includes the entire game development team, as well as its game, Pokemon Go, Pokemon Bloom, and Monster Hunter Now, which I actually forgot they had Monster Hunter Now. I think that just came out this year, the end of last year, I believe.
I think it was 24. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this also includes, and I forgot I was going to look this up, Campfire, the apps and services Campfire and Wayfarer, which I can't remember exactly what those two applications did. It doesn't mention what they are here in the in this article, but yeah, I don't remember what they were. And this will also see Scopely assume control of the popular live events like Pokemon Go Fest, which they have. I think they've still pretty much kind of gone away from the kind of big spectacles that they kind of were before COVID. I think they're still pretty much they still have them, but I don't think that's because like I'm here in the Midwest, near Chicago, and they used to have this big thing where it was like a physical thing where you can go into like Grant Park, Lillian Park, and they have it all blocked off, and you could only get in if you had tickets and stuff, and there's special stuff that you can do within the game and all that, but you had to be like within that that area. So, which is actually pretty cool. I went to a couple of them, but now I think they're pretty much online, just online things that you have to pay for. So. Still, it's all right. So from the CEO, John Hank, excuse me, Niantic games have always been a bridge to connect people and inspire exploration. I'm confident they will continue to do both as part of Scopely. And then just kind of jumping down here, Scopely was acquired by Saudi Arabian multi-international game investment group, Savvy Games Group, back in July of 2023 for $4.9 billion. It appointed Nika Noor as SVP and head of international business development. So yeah, I was kind of surprised, I guess, because I don't know if it's more just because maybe it was getting too big for them, or what. I'm trying to think of like what the rationale was for them to go or to get bought like that. I guess money is always a big a big thing, but I just thought it kind of surprised me. I guess like it's been a while since I've been surprised by a new story. So
yeah, or potentially like they're looking to develop something different, and just the maintenance and everything that they've done since Pokemon Go has been somewhat has been based on that aspect. Whether it's Monster Hunter Now, which Warwana talks about, that's really neat, Warwana, that they are pulling in some items into Wilds as well through Monster Hunter Now. But they, there's been a number that have kind of come and gone, right? There was the Harry Potter one, which died.
Yeah.
There was the Avengers one that wasn't long for the world. There was an NBA one, which I played a little bit of, which again was shut down within a few months. So, I think it's trying to capture and how to keep this going, or having the kind of startup money now from the buyout to go off in a different direction and see what comes next. So
my understanding is, as part of this tale is, when they went into the pandemic, there were a lot of predictions that Pokemon Go wasn't going to survive the pandemic because, of course, it required people to be outside in a world where now people weren't supposed to be outside. And so, Tal, you would know better than I do, but I guess they made some modifications to like accommodate and do some workarounds of the pandemic. But then after the pandemic, and so not only did the game like retain its user base, but it onboarded a lot of additional people as well. And so it very nearly peaked in the pandemic. But then post-pandemic, they rolled a lot of those things back, made some changes, alienated some of the people who had onboarded during the pandemic, and they've never been able to recapture that magic. And so you had, and I don't know what their hiring, posture was, but you had a property that had kind of ballooned, kind of, if you want to think about it, like in Destiny 2 scope and scale, that they were just never able to recapture. And then as they came out with additional properties, then obviously no property was able to ever achieve the same thing that Pokemon Go had done, which just made it a difficult problem from the aspect of investors. So I think that's why they moved to offload it. It didn't say in this article, but I thought that the whole thing was because this is very much kind of like the HTC buyout that happened a few years ago with Google, where a headline might have said Google buys HTC, but they didn't really buy HTC. They actually bought, and same thing when Logitech acquired Mad Catz. What they actually acquired was all of the engineering talent and any associated engineering IP. Same thing here. They didn't actually buy Niantic because there's still people working at Niantic. They acquired the development team and those properties. And I thought that they were now, that business unit was now being called something different, and that's a subsidiary of Scopely, and that Niantic actually still has some type of financial, like Niantic will still get some kickbacks from like residuals from it, I thought. But they didn't talk about that in this article, so I'm not sure exactly where that went.
Yeah, that would seem to make sense because it is that there's some separation here between them. So, all right, Tao, why don't you, speaking of games, some of Niantic's games that didn't really, weren't too long for the servers online. We've got another game here that's only been out for a year and a half or so that I believe both you and I played and talked about, which is Star Wars Hunters. There we go. I got there eventually.
You got there. Yeah. So this was, I completely forgot. This is from Zynga. They debuted Star Wars Hunters, free to play 4v4 shooter that introduced new characters and places and placed them in death matches in familiar locations from across the Star Wars universe. So kind of, I guess, kind of Overwatchy, but it was more like
Yeah, it was.
deathmatch. Yeah,
It
hero
was
shooter.
kind of over. It was a hero shooter. You had ultimates, you had powers, you had certain classes, and then but it was definitely a Zynga game in terms of leveling up all your characters and weapons and things like that.
Yeah,
I
so-
enjoyed the gameplay, but like many things, it gets easy to get bogged down in the free to play model.
Yeah, I played for a few weeks, and actually not even during launch. It was like way after launch because I had downloaded on a Switch. I think it was only on Switch initially, and then it came out for PC, maybe. I think console.
I think it initially was mobile and Switch, and then eventually it came to PC as well.
Yeah. So yeah, and it was fun, and I liked it, enjoyed it. But yeah, it just got buried with all the other games I'm playing. So unfortunately, it was good, but not good enough, I guess. On the official Star Wars Hunters website, Zynga shared the news that the game will receive its final update on all platforms on April 15th. Following that update, Hunters will remain playable and available for download until August 1st, which is when it will shut down. Afterwards, the servers will shut down, rendering it completely unplayable. Zynga, thanked fans for support and promised to be transparent during the game's final months. And then I'm going to kind of skip their quote there. But although the game is shutting down, Zynga has noted that crystal purchases, which I'm assuming is just like the in-game money that it used, because I don't think I even went into the store really that much, will not be refunded, in part because the 30-day notice is meant to give players enough time to spend their currency before all in-game purchases are disabled on April 15th. Season 5 will be extended by 3 weeks and will rerun some of the events and kind of shop bundles they had before. So it's kind of weird because if you know the shop's gonna, if you know the game's gonna shut down, I'm not really sure why you'd want to spend any money on it since this is a free to play online game. You're not gonna be able to play it at all. And they didn't mention in this article, and I didn't see it in any others, that like if there's gonna be some way to play it, but it doesn't look like there will be. So
no, I haven't heard anything of an offline version of it. No.
Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, fun game, but and I think this is like one of maybe at least one other, maybe two other games I think that were announced last week. I didn't put them in the rundown. Kind of live service games. A couple that
there are a
I never
couple
even heard, I don't remember or even heard of. I think I don't know if you had ever heard those other games.
I'm trying to remember what that.
I thought there was some kind of racing or kart game maybe that was like a free to play or something. I don't know. I had never heard of either of them. So I think one might have been just an Xbox exclusive, possibly, or maybe I just saw it on like an Xbox news site or something. But yeah, so no more Star Wars Hunter after October of this year.
Well, let's go from closing down servers to opening them back up. The next news story here really was probably not a huge news story, but probably the most surprising for me of the week in terms of bringing back a mid 2010s MMO.
Yeah, so Defiance, which was tied into the sci-fi show of the same name, it's coming back. So there was the original Defiance MMO came out in 2013 as a paid game for PC and PS3 and 360 at the time, before it was adapted to a free-to-play model and continued to receive updates even after the TV show was canceled in 2015. And then a new version of the game, Defiance 2050, came out in 2018, but both games were shut down in 2021. Now it's come back. So Fox, a game company whose mission is breathing life to old worlds and preserving their legacies, has announced plans to bring Defiance back following a deal with previous rights owner Gamigo. Even though the TV series was discontinued in 2015 and Gamigo eventually closed the game in 2021, the memories of the epic Arc Falls, an immersive post-apocalyptic I'm having troubles now too. Post-apocalyptic battle lives on in your hearts, Fox said. So initially, they're going to just re-release the original game in April of this year. So actually not too far away. It didn't give an exact date. I don't think. No, there's no exact date. Just April 2025 for PC, and then it will explore possibilities of bringing back to consoles. So I did play this game when it originally came out, probably for like a month or so. It was actually pretty fun. And I think Game Logic, did you play this too? I thought I remember. No, you didn't. I thought maybe you had for some reason.
Yeah, I used to watch the television show.
Oh,
so
okay.
this
Maybe
was,
that's what I was thinking.
and this was,
I remember.
this is the sad thing is that this, as the article notes, this was in the, trying to figure out a polite way to say it. This is when sci-fi was definitely hitting the toilet bowl ring of the downward flushing motion, had renamed themselves to sci-fi, SYFY, as if that was cute and would be something that resonated with actual science fiction fans. Yeah, this was I liked the show. It was kind of quirky. It had a lot of like sci-fi, like there are actors and actresses who will frequently show up in science fiction, like cult classic and favorite shows, and there were a lot of people like that in this show.
Yeah.
It never made sense to me what the video game tie-in was, so it's strange as heck to me that I didn't understand it the first time it was around, but now you're going to bring this back in this kind of an environment where, you know, there are games built on, you know, new IP or much bigger IP, as is the case with Star Wars, right, that we just talked about, you know, shuttering, and then you're going to try and bring this back. It's just kind of weird to me.
It does really make me wonder what the business model is for this, right? Like, it was free to play, you know, to what extent, you know, it will be a small number of servers so that the overhead is actually not a whole lot. If they own the rights to the game itself, it could just be in maintenance mode. You know, they don't necessarily talk about kind of new content for it. It really sounds like it is simply just bringing it back online. And so yeah, I'll be interested to see, you know, maybe we're in like it's been long enough now that the middling MMOs of the late 20, you know, the late aughts are coming back into fashion. And or yeah, so I don't know. It never really had that big of an overlap from what I remember. Like, I remember at one point there was like a storyline that was crossing, not necessarily even crossing over, but like whatever the event was happening both in game and in the show. But for the most part, it always felt like it was a game that lived in the world of the show, but not necessarily was dependent on content from the show.
Well, that was supposed to be the shtick, right? Is like you would watch the show and they would like open right with a thing, and then that thing would be continued in the game. Like there was be this whole back and forth. So theoretically, the biggest reward would be if you both watched the show and played the game. But the show had to be written in a way that it wasn't dependent upon the game, right? So that people wouldn't feel like they were being disenfranchised. But I don't know.
Well, and the development, you know, the timelines of developing content for an MMO and shooting a new episode of a series are two totally different timelines in terms of creative output. So
yeah, I never got as far as to that part, like where they're supposed to intersect. So I don't know how that worked, but I always thought it was kind of interesting at the time, I guess, because, you know, they're trying something different, I guess, or new. Because I don't think. What was that game from Remedy? Quantum, the one that kind of had the TV show tie-in, not tie-in, but it actually had like a TV show basically baked into the game. I think before that, so they were kind of trying, you know.
Is that Quantum Dream? Or was that the studio?
Quantum Break?
That's the Quantum Break. Yes. Quantum Dream is a studio.
With one of the Ashmores. I forgot which one it was.
Yeah, and Lance Reddick was in it. And
Iceman.
Yep.
Iceman. Yeah, Iceman. Yeah. So, you know, it was before that. So they're, you know, and I think sometimes they kind of play around, you know, with that stuff. But this was like, you know, an actual TV show that was out there and with, you know, a game. So I don't know if it was more akin to, you know, kind of how like if you used to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., like they kind of like in the early seasons, at least, they kind of mentioned like stuff that happened, and it would kind of affect the show too, like with not the Battle of New York, but what was the other one? I think they kind of mentioned like Avengers 2 with Ultron, but then when Civil War broke out, that kind of like flip things around in the show, kind of in a major way. So I don't know if it was something like that they were trying to do. Like I said, I never got to that point in the game, but it's kind of interesting. And they kind of mentioned this, or they mentioned in this article too, that they've helped revive games like Shia and the Lost Chaos, and they have rights to Desert Operations and Wargame 1942, which I don't recognize any of those games, so I'm not even really sure what those are. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of those games. Desert Operations kind of sounds familiar, but I'm not really sure. But yeah. But so Defiance is coming back, I guess.
Yeah, the show was on for 3 seasons. So I mean, it wasn't a total flash in the pan.
Yep. Yeah, and I think like you mentioned, DB, like they don't mention what the like business model is. Is it free to play again? Is it going to be just like a buy once paid and that's it? Or so we'll see. I guess next month.
Yeah. Yep, we will see. So Warwana in the chat had a question. So let's, as we're talking about revivals and closures, we had the announcement this week of Rainbow Six Siege X. So Warwana's question is, with the reveal of Siege X modes releasing in June and X Defiant closing in June, does it seem like Ubisoft just wanted to manage one game? I'll be interested to hear what you think about this game. To me, this feels like there is a strong player base and identity already that exists with Rainbow Six Siege, and taking some of the game modes and continuing to add game mode variety into that universe feels like easier to maintain in terms of holding on to a player base than running a whole separate, X Defiant. And I think one of the challenges with X Defiant is that it was where the economics of that model came from and what the sustainability looked like and how much they needed in terms of traction and player kind of retention, that potentially this is a way to, I don't know that it's necessarily a one or the other Warwana. I think that X Defiant definitely felt like it earned its closure, and it seems reasonable that Ubisoft, especially when they are struggling somewhat financially themselves, that they're going to leverage some of their existing IP that has a stronger player base to it. Game Launcher Katao, any thoughts to Warwana's question?
I mean, just to make sure I understand, so Wara says with the reveal of the Siege X modes releasing June 10th, as far as I know, they're only introducing one new mode. Right? It's this dual front mode, which has.
That's what I'm seeing as well. It's got, a standard quick play and a dual front mode. 26 operators. Yeah.
So it has respawns, which Rainbow Six Siege normally does not, and it's normal PvP modes. It's 6v6, and it's attackers and defenders joining forces. I'm not sure what exactly that means, but teams have to simultaneously defend their zone and attack the enemy zone. Oh, okay. So it's the other modes. The other mode or modes that are similar within Siege, you're on attack or defend. You're not doing both at the same time. Respawns are 30 seconds, and you can swap operators between lives. Capturing a zone pushes the enemy back to their next zone. Capture all 3 to win. I can't remember what game had I think maybe Battlefield has something like this, where when you like lose a node, like when you like lose the battle line gets pushed back or whatever.
Yeah, I think it was rush mode, if I'm remembering correctly. But yes, Battlefield did have, or does still, I guess technically, if Battlefield 2042 still is up and running.
Okay, so Wara says in the beta there's standard quick play and dual, so it's in dual front modes. So yeah, I mean, I don't get that impression that it was that shutting Defiant down was like a MacGuffin because they didn't want to manage both Siege and X Defiant. I think Siege and X Defiant, while they're both PvP first-person shooters at their heart, the gameplay and the appeal to the player base for Siege is significantly different than X Defiant. Siege is a challenge, right? And it only appeals to a certain type of player. I don't like playing Siege because of the idle time factor, right? Because if you're not good enough to stay in the game for very long, then when you die, you're just sitting around, right, waiting for your teammates to, to either win the match or not win the match. When you observe really good Siege team players, like the person who's out observing the match will still be trying to help, right, in the chat or whatever, comms with their teammates. I mean, X Defiant, to me, and Tao, you can let me know if your experience was different. I mean, I definitely saw evidence of why X Defiant didn't hold on to its player base. Not only did it, I mean, it was a studio who had never done a PvP first person shooter before trying to do it. And so it was the same thing as the Arcane Austin, right, factor as far as I was concerned. There was whatever anti-cheat they had in the game, if they had any, was completely ineffective, because I ran into cheaters very frequently, people flying around the map with complete visibility on everybody's spawn points, being able to snipe people as soon as they spawned, and other problems like that. And just the long grind of getting to new operators, and things like that was just, it was too long. And I mean, in this day and age, in this market, I think what you have to do is it's a metric, right? You can see, and they tell you, right, in most games, what points you can calculate. Okay, how many matches do you have to do to pop a rank in Call of Duty? How many matches do you have to do to level up? Whatever you want to look at. And I think you have to decide, if my game is going to have a longer grind than the most popular game, then there has to be a get, right, that's better. And if your get's not better, then people ask, why am I doing this, right, when I could be playing the other game and progressing faster? And I'm not saying Call of Duty gets it, Call of Duty definitely has things where, and I could see this year where the grind got lengthened, so, but those are decisions you have to make. And it was definitely a longer grind in X Defiant, and the get to me was I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I grinding this long just to get to another operator? This doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know, Tao, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's when I was playing X Defiant, I was like, man, I could just be playing Call of Duty. It seemed a lot more polished, and obviously, it had just come out, so obviously they could have grown on it and upgraded it and made it better. But at a certain point, I guess you got to kind of just cut your losses when you see, obviously the player base is dwindling. So, and on a side note with Call of Duty, I actually think in some ways it's a little bit the opposite for me. When I used to play Call of Duty, but you know what, I'll talk about that later when I'm talking about Call of Duty. But yeah, I just think it's they just saw the return, the ROI just wasn't there, so they're just going to cut it off, and forget about it. Obviously, if it was doing a big siege numbers, that obviously they would have kept it, they kept going. But I think it just dropped off too fast as far as their numbers, so they were just like, yeah, we're going to get rid of that, and we'll try this. So this seems interesting. I play Siege sometimes still with my son, but yeah, man, it's I think the biggest problem with Siege for me is just trying to learn these maps, because there's just so many ways you can get into a map, and you can blow out this wall, but you can't blow out that wall. Or maybe if I have this operator, I can blow out that wall, but I can't with other operators. So it's, and there's a lot of operators now, a lot of operators. So it's just this seems a little bit more, because it's more run and gun, it seems. So maybe this will be more my speed once it comes out, for good. I think there's a beta test going on or about to come on. I think this week with the 19th. Yeah, so a few days. So maybe I'll jump into it.
Well, that's what I wonder if the respawn rate will bring people who historically wouldn't have played the game. Yeah, because with the respawns, you don't have that idle time, right? It's you make it capped, but you're coming back and getting in on the game. And so I wonder if it will bring in a wave of new players who then may, right, as we always say with other business models that are meant to hook a player in, and then once you're in, right, have you go down other little tributaries, right, to find other 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 means of investing in the gameplay and staying in the system, and then they've got you right. Then they've got you a hook into you to hopefully monetize more.
Yeah, and if you're not playing that quick match in Siege, that game takes a long time because it's best out of what, 7, I think, rounds. So it's like, man, you just keep going unless you can win those 3 rounds right away. But that usually doesn't happen. So you're playing for at least a half an hour, 20 minutes maybe at the least. So yeah, they can be pretty long.
Nate has some good comments in the chat. And Nate, thanks for joining us. You talk about kind of the grind in terms of Battle Pass and the challenges of kind of keeping up with that, and also kind of the way that Epic and Fortnite has really scaled that and honed that in terms of feeling like the progression is steady. And as you said, Nate, like Fortnite respects your time more than others, so it gets your time. Thanks for the question, Morawana. Appreciate that. Thanks, Nate and Morawana, for the comments back and forth in the chat regarding this as well. We've got one more story. So in the week of having the Windows Central rumor of an Xbox branded PC handheld, we also have a rumor of Steam bringing a Steam OS coming to desktops. Game Logic, why don't you take that last news article?
Yep. So this news story over on Hot Hardware by Paul Lilly. Valve is rumored to bring Steam OS to desktop PCs very soon. A leaker on X claims Valve is getting ready to release a version of Steam OS for desktop systems, which, if true, would effectively extend the Linux-based platform's reach beyond the realm of gaming handhelds. The rumor surfaced just before Valve released its Steam OS 3.7.0 preview build with some key tweaks to the operating system's desktop mode. It's possible the leaker, sadly, it's Bradley, is conflating the two, though it doesn't sound like it. In the same X thread, he clarifies that the image of a SteamOS splash screen he posted was not one that he made, but an official generic splash screen for SteamOS general release non-Steam Deck devices. So the heat around this rumor has actually been building up for quite a while. Bradley's drop is just the latest. And this goes along hand in hand with rumors that we've heard of Steam, or Valve making another run at Steam boxes, and what does that look like? Are they working with partners? Are they just planning on dropping the OS and letting you roll your own? So the Steam OS drop has been around for a while. There is actually, at least there used to be, a page you could go to that talked about your ability to download Steam OS and install it on a desktop PC. I tried to do that when I built my Linux gaming box about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. It did not work. There was one particular step in the process that I could never get past. And so I don't know if that page was just a page that was exposed as a mistake. But as far as I know, there were people who were able to get it to work. So I'm not sure what that is, but if this is coming to fruition, great. I don't know that it's going to set the world on fire. I'm sure that there will be some people who will be interested. There are always these little burbles of people who have interest in doing things that are off the beaten path, and that's great. But I think your mainstream gamer is going to stick with what works and what's easy. And despite the fact that there are lots of nerds who, will pick this stuff up and make it work and say, all you have to do is X. But there are people who don't want to do all you have to do is X because of the times that all you have to do is X, except, right? Then you have to do this, right, to do the workaround and figure it out. And, the proof of that is somewhat, the people who argued with me that the Steam Deck would be an easy to figure out device and an easy thing to make run, with all of your Windows stuff that you normally can't get to with Steam. And then all you would have to do is watch a YouTube video and it would just work. That's not the case. People don't want to watch a YouTube video to make a thing that they bought that in their mind is an appliance. Roll over and turn tricks, like a dog. So this will be interesting. Will it chip away at Windows market share? I don't think so. It says in the article here, Windows accounts for 97.58% of all Steam gamers. versus 1.45% who play on Linux. That 1.45% is the only reason it's that big is because of the Steam Deck. So before the Steam Deck, it wasn't even that big. So, this is neat. The main question is, so we know it's not going to make a big enough knock. The only way it's really relevant is if it makes a big enough knock to cause Microsoft to alter its behavior, right? With some of the kind of, in my mind, egregious stuff that it does now on Windows, right? The Game Pass ads that are in your face, lots of the inserting, apps right in your start menu that aren't really the app, but if you click on them, then it'll try and install, like things that Microsoft tries to do with Windows, even though Windows is like 98% of the operating system of the world, right? Meaning that they absolutely don't have to do that stuff. If it influences them to make those changes in behavior, great. I just don't know that it will, because, even though SteamOS is neat, by the same token, anybody who's smart enough, I think, to try and install SteamOS is smart enough to have built an Ubuntu gaming box before. And, despite that fact, those numbers, right, haven't really changed.
Yeah, I think it's a really good, speaking of coming back around as we're talking about Defiance from the mid 2010s, Steam boxes and Ubuntu and, the conversations of a Steam OS coming and disrupting the market. We've been down this path before, and it always kind of is it's a hobbyist more so than it is a market changer. All right. Well, let's round the corner into our final segment. We're Hero Down Under. I reading your FC 25 in terms of football club respects your time. As someone who is grinding his way through PGA Tour and the season pass there, yes, there's a benefit of sports gaming in that season pass grinding as well. Tao, you are up first because I'm guessing you've got some grinding of your own as you're talking about. It's been a while since we've talked about Call of Duty Black Ops 6, so give us an update.
Yeah, so I kind of fell off for at least like a week, maybe even 2 weeks of playing. And then
a week? Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
are you okay? Oh,
I was playing a little bit, but not as much as I had been playing. And then I started up again this week. I was trying to beginning of the week, Monday and Tuesday, I was trying to play, and man, I was getting absolutely destroyed. Like I couldn't do anything. So I kind of like let it go for a couple of days, and I picked it back up on like Thursday and or Friday. I think actually Friday was when I mainly was starting to play again. But I was starting to do good. I don't know what happened there in between those like week and a half, 2 weeks that I hadn't been playing. But
you lost your muscle memory.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But finally I was playing again, and then kind of going back to when we were talking about that article before. When I was saying about about kind of progression, it seems like the battle pass, it seems like I'm going through that way faster than I've ever done before in the past, especially in Cold War, because I was probably playing Cold War. I mean, just as much as I have been playing 6 now, and it always seemed like it would take forever to do anything in the battle pass in that game. But now I pretty much almost got through the whole battle pass. I think I'm like a couple of pages maybe out, and I think there's and that was probably like a few weeks ago, and then like now I think there's like 20 days or something, maybe a little bit less than that left in the battle pass. So I'm almost done. So, but like I had mentioned before, it seems like they're giving out a lot of free experience, like double experience tokens and stuff nowadays, and especially for the battle pass, which I don't think I remember. Like I mentioned before, I don't think I've ever seen the battle pass stuff come up unless you're actually going through the battle pass where it gives you that kind of stuff. But almost every day when you go into the store, there's a free 2 times whatever, either weapon battle pass or just regular experience for your level. So it's just kind of interesting. So I think I mentioned that last week. I did prestige for the 5th time last week. So I'm working on my 6th prestige right now. So I'm going up there. It's probably the highest I've ever done. So just kind of still plugging away, still really loving the game. It's just great. I'm still not hot. Man, the Hacienda map, I just do not like it. This is probably one of the first maps where I just do not like it all. There's been some, and even in this one, where there's a couple that I was playing, I was like, it's okay, but it kind of grew on me eventually. There's Haciendas, man. It's just enemies can come from like literally anywhere. Like it's kind of like that for all maps, in some respects. But that one just seems like it's just too open, like too crazy. But I'm having other than that map, like I like Grind, which is the new one I think from this mid-season that they had dropped, kind of in turn with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collab that they were doing. So it's kind of Grind Ooze. I think right now I'm assuming they're just call it Grind once that's done. That's great. Dealership's great. I forgot what the other one kind of when you're in that like high-rise apartment, Blackout or something like that. That one's good. Like
Bounty,
yeah. Knew it was something to be, but yeah, I like those maps. But yeah, just Hacienda is just like it's a bad map. Like I'm sorry, it's a bad map. So, but other than that, like I said, I'm still having a good time with it. I'm having a lot of fun.
Game Logic, any follow up?
No, I haven't been playing since I dropped off in the middle of season 2.
Okay, so I was curious if you've been back as well. Tao, stay on the mic here, and Marvel Rivals, another one that kind of continues in your regular cycle.
Yeah, so once again, I jumped back into that one. I hadn't been playing also for the last couple weeks, kind of live service week this past week, except for this last game I'll talk about later. Jump back into Marvel Rivals. I've actually played a lot of characters I hadn't played before. So there's a new event that's going on right now where, it has challenges for that event and you have to do like certain, play with certain heroes to do certain things. So I was like, all right, let me do that because I haven't played with a lot of heroes. So I played Squirrel Girl for a little bit. It's actually pretty good, pretty powerful, which is kind of weird. Just her main attack, like her ultimate's like all right, like if you can kind of dwindle down the enemy's health like a good bit, maybe halfway, 3/4 of the way, and do her ultimate. It's just like a bunch of squirrels that come out and like kind of like mob rush you. But it's kind of easy to get away from if if you see it coming. But if you don't see it coming, like she can knock you out pretty quick. But her regular attack's like really strong and it actually bounces off like walls and stuff, so you can like hit someone around the corner, which I've killed like playing people that way, which is kind of hilarious. Just doing it that way. But yeah, played her and I played Namor, depending on how if the MCU version. I've been playing him these past couple days, and he's actually pretty decent too. He's got these like his main attack's just like a spear he throws out like a trident. He's got 2 different versions of that, and then he has these 2 little octopi, plural of octopus, that you can throw out that are kind of act like turrets. So they'll obviously shoot whatever in front of them or near them. So that's pretty powerful too. So his ultimate, these 2 characters I've been playing, like they're kind of weak. His ultimate is like this giant whale that comes out and like hits the people and it kind of knocks them down for a few seconds. So his ultimate should really work with somebody else's if you can coordinate that way. But it's not the strongest thing in the world, but it's kind of at least kind of gives you a pause for a few seconds to give your other players a chance. So but his attacks are pretty strong. His attacks though, you have to be like spot on when you're like hitting somebody. You can't, there's no splash damage with him or like ricochets or anything, so you definitely got to have your aim when you're playing him. So but having a lot of fun with both those characters. So I think there's a couple weeks also with that one left for this season. So we'll get the next season coming up. Hopefully we'll get some information. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen any leaks or anything what the next season is going to be. Maybe we'll get Blade finally. Like Blade's like kind of trapped in one of the levels. So I thought maybe he might be like another character they would introduce this season, but he hasn't been. So maybe we'll see him or if something else is going to happen. So I'll be excited to play that. And still, no more than like 3 or 4 seconds to get into a match. I love it to play that game. So it's just still amazing that even to this day, it's still that quick to get into a game.
Nice. Game Logic, another game that you talked about a couple weeks ago in terms of Sniper Elite Resistance. Back playing that again this week.
Yeah, nothing much to report other than, the most recent mission that I went on. I think I'm a little bit over halfway through the game now, through the single player campaign. I felt a little offended that, I was not, consistently was not like playing the game from a stealth perspective and not, because the game scores you when you get done with a mission, right? you get not only like a kind of new, I think it's a star score, but you also get told like in which quadrant you're in. And I think there's assault, there's stealth, and then there's like one or two. There's two other quadrants. I can't remember what they're called. But so since I wasn't able to prevent the enemy from ever fixing my location and setting off alarms and stuff, but what I did do this time is I spent more diligence around defeating the alarms once they were set off, and then also taking out as many people with melee as I could and not just kind of sniping everyone. And so whatever that lower right hand quadrant is, so it's not stealth, but it's like the next best thing to stealth. Right? My score aligned in that quadrant more so. So at least that's something rather than just going in kind of guns blazing.
Is it pretty transparent in terms of how it grades you, in terms of what factors make up where you line up in those quadrants?
Not overtly, but like the quadrants are pretty simply named that it's pretty obvious to be able to figure it out.
All right, Tavo, you got your last game here, so it's a oldie but goodie. Or actually, it's old, but it continues to get more content.
Yes, so seems like new, like every 3 months or so, every quarter. So No Man's Sky, still plugging away in that. I actually finished the Titan Expedition, which was the new expedition, the first new expedition for this year. So it gave me a new multi-tool, which is basically like another staff. There's one from I think last year, the year before. They gave you a staff. I think those are the only two, I believe, in the game right now. Everything else is pretty much looks like a gun, more or less. This is like a little staff that you can like carry around, and you basically just do all the same stuff that a regular multi-tool does. And then they gave you another living ship, which I wasn't too excited with the first living ship that they had out. This one looks pretty cool. It almost looks kind of like a deep sea fish, maybe, that you'd see like in the deep sea, deep ocean. Looks pretty cool. So I enjoy that. And then they always give you like little like decorations you can do for like your builds and stuff like that. So there's the two big things with the staff and the ship. And then I finally did get VR working. I know I mentioned last week I was trying to get that going and I was having some troubles, but I had a pretty smooth experience early in the week in VR. Really cool. Like I said, it didn't, the graphics aren't the best in VR because, they can't have, I don't have like a super, high-end machine, decent, but I have pretty much everything on high, I believe. I think there's a couple things maybe I had to turn down a little bit to get it to run a little smoother, but for the most part, I have everything at high. But yeah, it looks really nice, and it it took a little while to get used to the controls because it's kind of VR controls, so you're like reaching behind you, from your back to pull out your multi-tool, and instead of just doing a button press, you do like this motion to like open stuff, like crates and whatnot you find in the world, and open other stuff. So just kind of get used to that stuff. But yeah, it's really I'm definitely gonna keep. Primarily, I still play like on my Steam Deck and PC, but I'll definitely jump into VR every once in a while. And I had heard, for like the longest time, that's a really cool experience to do that. The ship gameplay is a little weird. So you actually physically, and I don't know if I was trying to look for like options to change it in the settings, but you physically grab the stick in the game, and you're kind of like pulling that up and down, and left to right to move around. So that's kind of weird doing that, just because like since I'm not physically holding that stick, it's you're doing it in game. I tend to like overdo it, so I'm like going too forward or too backwards, and then the game doesn't see it, so it's I lose control of it, so and then I have to like let go and then grab it again, and and then I can go around. But
sure, without the actual physical stick to provide some resistance, it's easy to over accentuate.
Yeah, so it's a little weird. So I'm gonna try to see if you can kind of just use the sticks, but if not, I guess I'll just have to get used to it because it's a little weird. But otherwise, yeah, it's a really cool experience doing that in VR. So I definitely enjoy.
Nice. I'm sure it's much better than the last time I played it in VR, which was on PlayStation VR 1. So I'm glad that your experience, I'm sure, looks a whole lot better. But even then, like even back then, the immersion of it was still really enjoyable, even if the graphics on the PSVR 1 were not anything special. But that game has built such amazing worlds, and to be able to have it run in high VR and have it run on current consoles and old consoles, it really is a game that's out there for everyone. Speaking of games that are coming out, we've got out there for everyone. We've got a couple of big releases coming out this next week. With March, this week here in March, we got March 18th is our MLB The Show 25, which is the first time since it launched on multi-platforms that it's not on Game Pass, but it's only on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and then Switch. So while it's not, I find that interesting that it continues to be on Switch, but is not on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. But so MLB The Show 25 comes out on the 18th, and then on the 20th we have, as I was talking about, RPG Remaster earlier with Suikoden. We've got Xenoblade Chronicles X, the definitive edition, and then the big one, the off-delayed Ubisoft game, is Assassin's Creed Shadows, which comes out on March 20th. Gentlemen, anything this week, either these three big games or other smaller stuff that's coming across your radar that has you excited?
I definitely want to play Assassin's Creed Shadows, but I don't know if I'll pick that one up right away. I'll probably wait on that one. And then is that Chronicles X? Is that the one from the Wii that was released on the Wii?
Chronicles X is the Wii U game. It's
Wii U, okay.
The one Xenoblade that was kind of stranded on Wii U. Yep. How about you, Game Logic?
I'll probably be definitely diving into AC Shadows on launch day. Maybe I'll probably hold back just a little bit enough to see whether or not it's got performance problems on PC. But yeah, planning on jumping into that one, so I'll probably have to drop something into the backlog to get on that.
Fair enough. Well, we'll have some AC Shadows talk for next week then, because I know that I will be playing it as well. I have a few months left of my Ubisoft Plus year subscription that I did before Outlaws came out, because I knew that I'd get Outlaws and Shadow, except Shadow continued to be delayed. So I still get Shadow, but I mean, just not as long. But so yes, we've got some Assassin's Creed talk coming at you next week, most likely. And on the mic, all three of us will be back next week. Well, Tal, you're here next week.
Yeah, I'll be here next week.
Yep. And Game Logic, you will be in the host chair for next week as we run down not only the new games that we've been playing, but the new stories of the week as well. Nate, Warwana, Hero Down Under, thanks for joining us in the chat. I appreciate the conversation both with each other in the chat and back and forth with us. If you've got questions as we're going through things, the chat is a great space to engage with us, to throw some of those questions out there. Or in this case, as Warwana did, to throw us a curveball and give us something else to talk about, which is great as well. We're always glad to have everybody here, whether you are here with us live on Sunday evenings or you're listening or watching throughout the week. We appreciate you taking time to be with us. You have lots of choices for game discussions, and I'm glad that you are choosing us, and we hope that you continue to come back. Or if you've just discovered us, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Feel free to join us anytime. So, Game Logic, Towmaster, any final thoughts before we round out the night? We have hit our 90-minute mark. So for myself, DBQ Hams, Game Logic, and Towmaster 99, this has been episode 379 of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. We'll be back at you next week, as we always do, coming at 8 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. There we go. I couldn't even blame daylight savings time for that one. So until next week, play the games you love. Love those you play with. Be kind to yourself. Good night, everybody.